I can't tell. Hey, everybody.
Hey,
Hey, what's up?
we're live.
Hope everybody's
We're
surviving.
live. Ah,
Man,
Do you
we're
have a pick
surviving.
in your hair?
He
I
does.
do,
He
of
has
course.
the.
You know, you gotta pick
Oh,
up,
he's for the culture
Okay.
tonight.
Is
pick up
it
the pack
the
for the
metal or
culture,
is
man.
it the plastic?
Oh, they do have plastic
Oh,
or
you
metal.
know what, Lawrence?
It's
Sidebar.
the
I
classic.
have,
It's the classic one. What's up?
I have a little tool for Black men that came in this Black Excellence box by Terrell Thomas. You know Terrell Thomas, Sharik, I think.
Yes, I
Yeah.
do. Yes, I
Um,
do.
out
Hey,
of the
Trey.
Black Excellent box. And I can't use it because my hair's too long and I don't got a man to give it to. So I'm going to gift it to you for the holidays. Look at that.
Aw,
You so
I
sweet.
appreciate it. I
look at
appreciate it. I
it.
appreciate the love.
Yes.
I definitely use. I'll definitely pick it out, especially on days like
Yeah.
today, because I know we're all exhausted. I was up till like 3, 4 in the morning, and then hop back up and just tired, just exhausted. This election did not go the way I think anybody thought. Republican, Democrat, this just is a long, arduous process, man.
I think some people pretty much hit it right on the head with how it was going to go. To be completely
Really?
honest.
I was
Yeah,
not
especially that
expecting.
podcast I sent you.
I was not expecting Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham to keep their seats. I honestly wasn't. So it feels like it's going to be the still status quo that we've been dealing with, but we still have optimism. Okay, Biden
Yeah.
parents.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Well,
feel like Joe Biden kind of predicted a lot. I mean, not Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders
Bernie.
kind of predicted a lot of what's going
Yeah.
on right now. I mean, it was on point to the point. I was like, how you know?
Wait, I
Right.
saw
Exactly.
tweets. I saw tweets, but I didn't deep dive into what it was. So what was his whole prediction?
He basically said that Trump was going to do what he's about to do and is currently doing, saying that they're going to purposefully delay the election count, the ballot counting, to turn around and say, "Oh, stop counting. Oh, they're counting." He called it magical voting numbers earlier this morning. So
Yeah.
yeah, Bernie pretty much exactly said he was going to do what he was going to do, get the Supreme Court involved. A whole lot of other stuff. But I do want to officially introduce this episode since we've just been going with the
We just started.
This
We
is
just went right
another
into
one of these typical episodes. Welcome to Yup Live. It is another glorious Wednesday, the first Wednesday of November. So welcome to a new month. It's one of those days. The day after the election, Super Tuesday. We kind of already touched on it. How you guys feeling?
I'm not gonna lie, I feel good. I slept real. I had
You
some
slept.
night.
You just got back from vacation. Of course, you feeling
Right?
good,
Maybe that's what it is. Don't be hating over there, but I slept good. I woke up,
man.
slept in today. It's like, oh,
And you're glowing, girl. Your hair's done. You're
You are
glowing. You
glowing.
look good.
thank you. That's that vacation.
That vacation glow. What about you, Miss
Yeah,
Jasmine?
that's what it is.
I'm back in LA. I've been working. I had my vacation for the last 7 months in quarantine in Maryland. So I'm back at work. I'm back on the grind. So it feels good. Except
No.
for down to LA, the protests are popping every night, every day.
Just forget COVID, huh?
Right. So I need to go back to West Hollywood where I know somebody.
Be closer to me, huh? What's up with you, Lauren? Bobby Boy Bob.
I'm good. Just a little tired from
Did
last
you go to
night.
sleep or what?
I know. I was.
That
Hey,
pause
listen,
was so long.
I try to get my ginger ale or something to like pick me up, but this work, living life. I think I've been more focused after what I saw last night. I was really excited. I was, I guess, disillusioned. I believed all the polls again. Shame on fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. I believed it all. So going to sleep, I was like, what is happening to our country? It's way more divided. But then kind of having my bubble burst and waking up in the morning, I was relieved because I think we're on the right track, and at least in regards with the national election. But also, I'm just like, hey, this is the reality of where we're at. It's going to take a lot of work, but it's doable. So it's just a small baby step. I actually felt relieved. Had a big bubble, popped, and now I'm good.
Yeah. So I mean, let's get into it. A lot to talk
I
about.
have one more. Oh yeah, how are you feeling? And then I have one more thing, one more thought. But you talk first.
No,
Sheree.
you go first. You go first.
Okay. So, guys, I started working the polls because I'm that girl.
What kind of poll
Right.
you working, girl?
Because I'm that girl. It's like, no. I work the election polls. And, it was very disheartening. It was not disheartening, but it was a really big challenge for me because of the Iranian and Middle Eastern vote. It was a lot of women voting for their first time, voting for Trump to protect their money in Beverly Hills. And we all know Beverly Hills is a wealthy, very established community. Right. However, I wasn't never worried that we would turn red, but it was just disappointing to know that out of all the things and injustices going on in our society, what they've seen over the past 6 months, I guess 10, 11 months in the city of Los Angeles, they still couldn't separate their money from the civic engagement and the social repertoire, if you will, of America.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who they voted for, but they were very vocal. These women, I love them to death. I love their food. I love everything about them. However, they're wealthy women, and I get what they got to do.
They doing what they got to do.
Well,
to answer you guys how I'm doing, this was my first election voting in LA County. Even though, I've been absentee from Alameda County for
Alameda.
So it was kind of sad because I couldn't vote for like Barbara Lee or any of the people that I really care about, up in the Bay. And that only happened because I was forced to switch because of the Real ID. With the Real ID, I had to like show proof of residency and all that. So they switched me to LA County. So this was my first LA County vote. It was a little interesting. But yeah, it was an experience. So I'm like y'all. I'm just kind of waiting to see what's gonna happen. But go ahead.
And that's interesting because and I would love to talk about our voting experiences because in Beverly Hills, girl, you did not need to show ID. You just told me your name. You just told me, I asked you, can you verify a year of birth? Just guess a year, any year. And if it was the correct year, if you were able to look and peek over, you can catch your ballot.
You should have had to show ID to turn in the mail-in ballots? Because I noticed that too. Like I just had my ID out just because I expected to be asked for my ID.
No, so it was kind of up to the election worker where I was if you were to take ID. So I took IDs because it was easier for me to look them up in the system. So if you were in the system, then we did a provisional ballot or we did an absentee ballot or a CVR ballot, whatever type of ballots that will get counted after the fact. But we know California is blue. But anyways, whatever's counted after the fact, then they would count those in. But really, you go up, you say my name is XYZ. I say XYZ. What year were you born? I was born 1863. Okay, here's your ballot. Cast your ballot, and you're good to go.
All right. Well, we're going to have some more questions for you, especially regarding this ballot counting. So you didn't do any actual counting. You just did the
I just signed people in.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I didn't have to show my ID either. I was telling my sister that I could have been anyone.
Yeah.
For me, to be honest. And if she lived in California, nobody would know.
There were some precautions that we did. So for mail-in ballots, there is something where you have to do a witness signature and your actual signature of the person in XYZ. So we did look at those before we sent them in, but it wasn't anything rigorous that no one can,
Yeah, but like, that's a good thing, I think, because it protects communities like ours. Like for years, we've been disenfranchised from the vote, and even having a piece of identification, an ID card or a driver's license can be difficult if you're from a low income environment.
You don't have an address.
You don't have an address, So I think it's good. I don't think you need a state issued ID in order to cast a vote. So
I do think we need to show some form of identification.
Can we get a social security number? Can we get a EID? Can we get an EID? Can we get something? something
Yeah,
that
we don't have to show anything. I think that can get a lot of fraudulent voters that won't even be registered. Like, oh,
Thank you. See,
I
or
can
I can vote, or I can vote
I'm
twice.
excited you said that. I think that's a perfect segue into
Mhm.
the Trump fraudulent voter scandal that's going on right
Go for it. Right
So Trump came out yesterday and said that he won the election, which he didn't. Votes were still needed to be counted. Then he subsequently said, well, we need to just stop all counting of ballots because we have voter day and not voter week. That's completely ridiculous. In every other election in American history, people keep counting votes until they're all counted. Finally, he starts coming out and saying that, you know what? There's fraud going on. Initially, he has no evidence, no proof of any fraud. He's just saying, well, there's some fraud going along, so I need recounts in all of the close states. Today, he had his friend, former Mayor Rudy Giuliani, come out and say, well, the reason why we believe there's fraud is because we weren't able to see the individuals actually go through the ballots. So I think this kind of speaks to GD's point, and I think it's very relevant because a lot of people feel this way, right? If we don't have enough protection, then some people assume that something bad is going to happen. Now, me, I'm kind of a glass half full type of guy. You're going to have to show me that somebody's, fraudulently making up ballots. You're going to have to show me the dead people voting. You're going to have to show me something. But a lot of Republicans and conservatives right now are saying that because they weren't able to be close enough and actually get their hands on the ballots, that they shouldn't be counted because there's not enough protections. So this, I feel like, it comes back to a bigger issue. Liberals for a long time have always fought that we need fewer protections or we need fewer roadblocks in order to vote, because all those roadblocks were always to stop Black people. Before they had literacy tests, before you needed 2 forms of ID, they would do whatever they could to disenfranchise Black people from voting. Now, on the other side, you do have people that legitimately fear fraud. They fear, just last election, we did have foreign issuers kind of try to interrupt our election. They did a lot of internet stuff, but I've heard fears of saying, well, I don't know if Russia's going to send spies and do something. So how do we balance it too? How do we balance, our people being able to vote and then the security measures that some people feel they need?
Well, don't all the ballots have like tracking scan barcodes or something like that?
They do.
In LA County, there are QR codes, but that's my kind of concern, is that because it's all electronic, we know that Iran and China and Russia are all in our Wi-Fi, in our databases, and we're not checking IDs, and we're giving everyone in America a chance to vote. I think that's important, yes, with no restrictions, but I also think that it's also opportunity to manipulate votes, and it's also opportunity to duplicate votes, and it's also opportunity to add in new citizens that don't exist. I think that it was a lot of talk today about like stop the votes. I think we should count every vote. However, it's also a period of when those votes stop coming in, and also the vetting of it, and the lackadaisicalness of the election workers, or the seriousness that they put in physically, because it's hand done, and it takes efficiency, and it takes actual work to do it, and thought process, and so people got to go to sleep, or it's a computer that can get manipulated. So it's like we have to kind of choose our battles here.
Yeah, and I just my heart goes out to all the ballot counters and poll workers. They have like a live feed. If you look on CNN and NBC, they're showing these people in the background just counting, like, they're exhausted. But what's interesting to me is, Trump is, claiming all of these fallacies as he does. And people, his supporters, not even Fox News is standing behind him on this. But they actually have cameras in these rooms where the ballots are being counted. They have Republicans and Democrats alike in the room.
And independents.
And independents as well, verifying and checking. So I don't get why people just aren't using their head and just understanding what's really going on and making this something that it doesn't have to be. We don't know. Was there anything that you guys thought was disheartening in regards to some of these? I know, Lawrence, you have your feelings on some of the ballot measures that we discussed the last couple of episodes that we weren't passed, unfortunately.
For me, anybody who's watched the show knows I was going really hard for a no on Prop 22. It was the ballot initiative that essentially got rid of our statewide employment protections for gig workers, Uber drivers, Postmates, that sort of thing. I think it's sad. I think it's a slippery slope, and we'll see. I do understand that a lot of individuals were like, hey, we'd rather have this bunch of protections or awards that are better than what we've had before. But the way I look at it is like the same thing that happened with Jim Crow laws in the South. You have individuals that justifiably have rights based upon the state of California Constitution. And then somebody saying, well, we don't want to give you those rights, but we'll give you, 1/4 or 1/2 of the rights and like $5 extra. Just take that. And it's very short-sighted, but I can understand, being in that position and needing money and wanting money, you want to take the easy cash that's in front of you or whatever you can easily get. But in the long run, I think it's definitely a hit and a loss for gig workers in the state. One of my best friends, he hit me today and he was like, what's going on in California? Uber literally just bought a law. And I was like, that's kind of how I felt about it.
They bought a law.
They bought a law.
Yeah.
And I want to read what Uber sent to their workers. It said that with Proposition 22 passing, there will be healthcare contributions for drivers who work at least 15 hours a week, occupational incident insurance or accident insurance to cover medical bills for injuries sustained while driving or delivering for their Uber Eats consumer, and a minimum earning guarantee that is 120% of minimum wage for engaged time and includes an additional 30 cents per mile for expenses with no upper limit on drivers' ability to earn more. So for me, as someone who uses Lyft and someone who's also driven Uber, because I think Uber charges the consumer more and, logistics. For me, I see it as if I want to be a full-time worker and have 20 hours a week, that's a part-time worker. I'm able to kind of get my benefits and kind of have this flow of motion where I know this income is coming in. And I have and I have a little substantial amount of benefits while I'm working the job. Versus if I'm 15 hours or less, I'm really using this as some extra income, so I don't really care. So I think it's kind of from my perspective, I think it's a happy medium to appease everyone, because if you're 20 hours or more, I give you a little bit of protections while you're working under my care, but I'm also allowing for independent contractors who don't really want to dedicate a full 15, 20 hours every week. Because when I was working, sometimes it would be 2 hours a week, sometimes it'd be 40 hours a week, sometimes it'd be 3 hours a week. Like, I never knew based on my schedule. Mm-hmm. So I think people who rely on it, and I think that's the big issue, is Uber and Lyft and all these gig economies were never intended for people to rely on them. They're now, and it was supposed to be gig economy. It was supposed to be something supplemental. So now that they transitioned and have, I don't know if Trump has done what he's done with the jobs as he said he's done. Yeah. But if we were able to not have to depend on Uber and Lyft and use them as a supplemental income and just boost in our income and our home expenses, or something on the side that a college kid can do while they're in school, that's different than relying on it for a source of income where they now have to provide benefits and have to provide something for their workers as if it's a full-time job. So I think it's kind of a catch-22 there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing that I said yes on 22 because it does allow the average driver to have that flexibility. And I'm in Ubers and Lyfts, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'll do as well. And a lot of the people that are actually doing the work wanted to do yes, so they can have those flexible schedules. But the benefit that I like that Uber and Lyft both stated that they are going to allow certain individuals access to health insurance or provide a stipend so that they can utilize that stipend to health insurance. And so although it's not the full benefit of what it would have been if no would have actually passed, they are still getting some type of benefits if they qualify. And so I think that's the best of both worlds, because you can say, hey, if I work 15 hours or more, then I have the ability to be able to participate in those health insurance benefits if I meet these certain criteria. But if I decide not to do that and I just want to work 10 hours and get that money for surging, I'm able to do that. And so
it's a sweet spot.
And so, so I can really appreciate that they have the option now, where if this was never on the ballot before, they would have never even had the option. And that's one thing I love about California. California is very liberal, I should say, and they have the ability to be able to put propositions like 22 on there so people can have the choice of which one they want to do.
Yeah. I, to be honest, at first I was like, yes, on 22. And then, you know, as I did my research, a lot of the verbiage was very tricky. And then, as you said, you know, pretty much Uber and Lyft bought a law. They did a lot of, you know, ads and, you know, putting things out there. You couldn't pick up your phone without getting something. It's just, you know, ridiculous. But I would say after reading the verbiage and understanding a lot more of what was going on, I did decide no on Prop 22, even though I had a feeling it was going to pass anyway. And that was just more so because I felt as though with no, we could have come back to the table with a better proposition. We could have come back to the table with better options and more offers and the opportunity for people to say, hey, you know, this is what I want. I do want to be 1099, or those people who want to be W-2 to say, hey, I do want to be W-2, you know, creating more option-based platform for everyone to use. So definitely, it was kind of a bummer, but I definitely get what CJ was saying. And
that's an interesting perspective, Sharik, because we talk about that a lot with just races in general and contests in general, where we say no to things to try to fight for our wish list rather than just saying yes to what is offered and then modifying as we go. And I don't know if one is better than the other. I honestly don't. But that's an interesting perspective that I respect. I like that.
Yeah.
Also,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Lawrence.
I was just gonna say one other thing that I wasn't thinking about it a lot because it wasn't like a primary issue for me. But there is a small other legal difference, is that now that these individuals are not quote unquote employees, like if something does happen, if you are assaulted or raped or beat up in the car, you're no longer going to be able to go at Uber or Lyft. Like now you're just going to have to go to the individual. Before, as employees, you know, they would have been incentivized to do more background checks, to vet the individuals more, and they would be incentivized to make sure there's not systemic, you know, assault. But, you know.
Wait, so I'm confused because I thought this law validated that right and said that because we're passing this, we're saying yes, is that they do get those benefits now.
No, what I'm saying is that a yes means that they'll get some benefits, but they're not classified as employees.
Right.
So
okay.
They were never classified as employees, though.
They should have been under the state California. So that's why they were saying that. And under the state of California, they should have always been classified as employees. The California Supreme Court made a ruling a couple months ago saying as such. And that's why when that ruling came down, Uber's stock dropped. Everybody was scared of saying, like, what are we going to do? So they were under the law. But now, right after, they came out and bought this law. And so, no, this is really what I'm talking about is just the protection of the rider now. So the rider can go after an individual, but if they would have voted no, they would have been able to go after Uber or Lyft or Postmates or, you know.
So essentially the law is the same as it's been.
No, they were employees. The California Supreme Court said every Uber driver in the state of California is an employee, period. They came out and said that a couple months ago. And so now they're no longer employees. Now they're gig workers, which is somewhere in the middle, in between independent contractor and employee.
And that's the thing with the federal government needs to figure out is what they're going to do with this new class of employees, because we have gig employees / students / entrepreneurs. Then we have the W-2s, and then we have the actual like businesses and entrepreneurs who are corporate organizations, and then we have enterprise, and then we have, as the list goes on. And all of these are classified in different ways that affect all of our taxes, but we don't really know what each does because they want to fucking confuse us all.
I don't know, but I'm glad that now the average Uber Lyft driver does have the option. And we talk about healthcare benefits. There's still Medi-Cal, there's still Planned Parenthood, so there's still definitely ways for people to get those health insurance benefits.
It's not the same quality.
I think that's your personal preference. I've done both sides. I've been an entrepreneur and I've had to utilize those, and then I've had health insurance. So I think that just depends on the consumer and their experience. But one thing I will say is the prop that I was really, really excited about was Proposition 17, which now allows individuals that are eligible or that are on parole the opportunity to vote. And we all know that that's been a huge thing in this country. People who have felonies or on parole, they don't have that ability to vote. And so I am super excited about California paving the way for Prop 17. And so now people who are convicted of felonies that are on parole are actually able to vote under Proposition 17. So yay, those who voted on it, that was definitely a win.
Yeah, I was going to say too, just before you said that, and I'm glad you mentioned it, we do talk a lot about California propositions here. I mean, we live in California, we're from California, but it's important to note that California tends to be the leader in a lot of these new waves of more liberal or independent, or however you want to think about it. These, modern propositions and ballot measures. California tends to be the first ones to do it. So I'm curious to see, that now that we've passed Proposition 22 and 17, how that's going to now trickle down over to the rest of the country. Do you guys think it's likely that propositions will show up on ballots in other states, especially New York?
Yeah, so we saw that today, New Jersey. Oh, where Lawrence? We saw today that New Jersey passed a law to legalize marijuana, and then Portland legalized all drugs, which is very important because I think they were kind of the epicenter. I won't say the epicenter, but they were a very targeted state for the opioid crisis. So I think, yes, California moves the needle, but I think it's also, we have to remember that it moves the needle in coastal cities where there are high traffic populations of people of color or just dense populations. And I think as we see over and over in each election is that we kind of forget about the middleman sometimes in middle America.
Definitely.
I'm not going to lie. It just, California does pave the way for a lot of these things, which I'm thankful for. But other states also kind of look at us. And so the saying in Texas is don't be like California. Like, don't be like California. So there's
don't be like Texas.
Huh?
I don't want to be like Texas.
And you know what? When I said that, I was thinking about
Texas. Okay, so there is some discourse in regards to this, and a lot of people from California are moving to Texas, and people are like, "We're full. Stop coming to Texas." And so there is a lot of people that Texas is red still, and so very conservative. Feel like a lot of the next
4 or 8 years, huh?
Maybe, I don't know, but there are a lot of people that think that California, I don't think they would mind this particular proposition, but there are a lot of people that think that California is just wild and free and just way too liberal. Like we don't I'm torn because I'm in between the two, but I get a lot of pushback about that sometimes. Some of the things that are passed here in California, so it's interesting to see.
Yeah, like I want to know who voted
Yeah,
against rent control. Like,
And then I also wonder about like the Second Amendment and how that kind of works interstate. So if I am a California that is in Texas, I kind of want to adopt the rules where I can have a gun now and I'm free and da da da. But then I come to California and I have my gun laws and I'm free, and you know people get a little crazy in Anaheim. So I would love to see how that kind of trickles in. I mean, the hood as well, but so I want to see how that trickles out and how that plays out. But it's interesting how those two communities will kind of cross integrate and turn Texas blue.
Listen, and no disrespect to Texas, but all disrespect to Texas.
And I see Christopher Thomas too.
Until they can get their birth control issues right, until they can be consistently pro-choice, you know, and they're always against affirmative action. Like, come on, man. Like Texas, y'all gotta.
And we were against affirmative action.
Here's the thing:
there's a difference between Texas and California in regards to affirmative action, and there's a whole big difference between pro-choice in California and pro-life in Texas. Are we talking about the abortion issue, or are you talking about affirmative action?
I'm talking about both. You're telling me there's a difference, right? Okay.
So the difference between the abortion issue is that the state of California has sued several times against what the Supreme Court has said in regards to Roe v. Wade. They are the catalyst, the number one state that keeps pushing against it, that wants to have their freedom of religion to not allow abortions in the state. That doesn't happen here in California. In California, you see Planned Parenthood untested in the way that you do in California. I mean, that you do in Texas. In Texas, there's always allegations of people with protesters. The same way these Texans was out here following Trump around, Biden around on the bus and everything. The same way they do that.
The media will definitely sway. I understand, but I live in both places, and so my perspective is going to be different. But what I will say is that I was a little bit sad that Proposition 16 didn't pass. You know what I mean? And so what does that really say about California, who's supposed to be super liberal? And I've said it before. Wait. Let me land. This is what I've said on another episode. Is I've experienced more racism here than I have in Texas. And that's a shame. In the workplace, I've experienced it. And in different, how can I say this? I don't really know. It's disheartening, and so you talk about overt and covert in Texas. Unfortunately, at least I know what I'm getting into, but I've never been called the N-word in Texas. Here, I was called the N-word, and I had racist bosses. And so you have to imagine, like, we're supposed to be liberal, but how much of this racism is just kind of hidden? And hidden racism, microaggressions, that's all relevant and real. Obviously, because Proposition 16 didn't even pass.
I got a question for you, Gigi.
I can attest to that.
Let me finish what I was going to say.
I think we all had something to say to.
So when you look at the map of California, you look at all the districts that are broken down, like you really go in depth, and then you look at the migration to California and the migration out of California. You tend to see a lot of people migrating out of California that are socially and economically disadvantaged. That's why you see people going into Atlanta and into Houston for better way of life, for better wages, for cheaper housing. And the people that are coming into California, these gentrifiers, a lot of them, even in Silicon Valley, Lawrence, I'm sure a lot of them are from these rural states. They're the tech guys, they're the startup guys, they're all these people that have their own skewed views based upon where they're from. And we are seeing a lot of red turning up in California. It's just that we are particularly in these hubs and these inner cities. So we're not thinking that it's affecting us, but I definitely think that there's a wave that's happening. I think California is progressively becoming a lot more red. And it showed. It definitely showed with these propositions being passed the way that they did. I mean, rent control, y'all. I'm still mad about that.
Well, because people can afford their houses. And I want to piggyback off of what Gigi said, because even coming from DC, I mean, I guess the generation before me, when I was younger, it was the Chocolate City. but it's run by white people. All the wealthy areas are white people. Potomac, Maryland, and Chevy Chase is where all the senators and congressmen and everyone lives, right? All the executives in government. But when I came to LA, I was shocked when I walked down the street and someone called me the N-word, or when a girl who was clearly more junior than me was my supervisor and I had to direct her on things, and then I got in trouble because I spoke up. Because woe is me, the angry Black girl. But I went to school in the capital of the Confederacy in Richmond, Virginia, and I didn't feel the same way about racism and kind of the microaggressions that I did as I've been in California.
I'll say this. What I'm referring to, and I get it, right? When I say the term racism, I'm not talking about what some people may consider individual prejudices. I'm not talking about people calling you nigga. I'm not saying people that just don't like you because you're Black. I'm talking about systemic racism. That's why I point to pro-choice. That's why I can point to Confederate flags and antiquated systems of statues that are up. I can point to and this is the question I was going to ask you, Gigi. In all the years that I grew up in California, not once did I ever encounter a sundown town. I drove through Texas a few times and really encountered those towns where they were all white. And for anybody that doesn't know, a sundown town is colloquially a town where by dark, as a Black person, you better get out or you know better. You may get beat up, you may get lynched. When you hear stories of transgender individuals getting drugged by trucks, that happens in sundown towns in Texas. So yes, you can go to California. There's a lot of people out there that may call you the N-word. There's a lot of racist people in that sense. But what I'm talking about legally, systemically, we can look at the laws of the state of Texas and the laws of the state of California. And I guarantee you the laws in the state of Texas are still worse for Black and brown people than they are in California.
I think that when you talk about racial injustices and systemic, that's everywhere, which is why the LA riots were what they were. So I just think we just have to be mindful and, like, how can I say this? Congratulate successes when successes are due without kind of putting down others, not putting down, but and it's like putting down other states, but we really don't know because you've never lived there. I've lived in both places, and so I have an experience of both places. And so there are places here that are racist. There's racism everywhere. And so and I'm not going to take away from your experience, just like I don't think it's fair for you to take away from me and Jasmine's experiences. What I'm saying is racism is everywhere. And I personally have experienced more racism in the state of California than I have in Texas. And so I think it's just mindful to learn from each other. You know, like, okay, you went to a sundown town and that was your experience. But I know, I mean, we're not going to bring that up, but transgender people here that have been murdered, that have been ridiculed and harassed. So it's not like it's just in Texas, it's everywhere. And so I just think it's important to be mindful and to really acknowledge people's experiences. Just like we acknowledge, okay, Texas really came out and voted early. They broke records for that. Boom. Same here. I think Proposition 17 passed. That is a success. But I think if we try to downplay each other's experiences and not really have empathy in regards to people's experiences, that separates us more, divides us more, and I think that we're stronger together, in my opinion.
I will say that I read that either Sherman Oaks or Burbank, one of them on the other side of the hill, was a sundown town. So I think, as you said, but as Lauren said, it is all about perspective and what we're experiencing and what we understand in our current moment. With that said, I also want to highlight how this is not an old situation that we've been through. Like sundown towns just happened in 1965. They were demolished, which was, I'm not a mathematician. However, I know the numbers, but so I think we just need to have perspective and realize that the people who were living in that generation when they were abolished, they were probably 10, 11, 12 when those ideas were taken from them, and they're just resurfacing and they're just wanting their America back.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think great points. And I think this is a perfect segue into another conversation I had earlier today. In the election, we've seen results come out now, and we've seen like voting patterns. Gigi, you pointed on something. You talked about having empathy for other communities, having empathy for other viewpoints, and celebrating successes when they're due. Throughout this election cycle, especially recently, there have been a lot of African American, not a lot, some African American men that have been voting conservatively. Compared to last election, I think 11 to 13% of African American men voted for Trump. This time around, I think it was somewhere 16 to 17% has been an increase. We've seen Lil Wayne come out and support Trump. And there's been a divide in the community. A lot of people are saying, well, hey, you know, those guys are goofy. Pretty much cancel culture, cancel the black men that are out here supporting Trump. Now, my question to you and everybody on the panel is that if you can see empathy for, you know, different states and different views, how should we treat the African American men out there that are voting for Trump in that situation? Should we show them empathy?
You're asking
It's
me
not just African American men. It's also Latino women. Their reporting have been shown up in droves. I actually did go down a rabbit hole last night before I got into my slumper. On the Blexit hashtag. I was going down the Blexit hashtag rabbit hole and just was like, wow, like who are these people? There was a whole Blexit march in New York. There was a Blexit march in DC. And if you don't know, Blexit is the black exit from the Democratic Party. And
hosted by.
It's very fascinating. Just I understand. I do have empathy for them. I have empathy for them because, according to them, you know, we have been brainwashed by the Democratic establishment. We have been brainwashed by politicians in general. Trump is the anti-politician, you know, regardless of him and his lack of actual policy. He represents the anti-establishment that has kept, you know, black and brown people down for so long. And we've seen it. You know, what happened in California yesterday with these, you know, these few propositions is really, you know, a reflection of what could be and what is and what currently is. We're not all in the green, basically. So I do have empathy for their position. I still think that a lot of it is false. They had a list. One of the Blexit hashtags put up a list of 400 things that Trump has done for Black America. And I would say, at least from what I could see, a good 50% of them were things that he kind of piggybacked off of from the Obama administration in terms of Black unemployment rate, in terms of jobs, in terms of these different policies that were actually already put into effect for him to be able to allow people to get out of jail for fraudulent or weed offenses. So it's just a lot of just people not doing their research, but I get it. You know, I try to have empathy as best I can. But the Latino women, I don't understand that one.
It's the Latino, but it's the Cuban Americans. And it was interesting because I was on Twitter today, and coming from the East Coast, I don't know if you all experienced this because you all are from the West Coast and from the South. But on the East Coast, you don't say someone's Mexican. You don't say someone is like what their state is. Like if you say someone's Mexican, that's so offensive, right? Mm-hmm. You say like, oh, he's Guatemalan or he's Latino or Hispanic. Like those are the general sense. You don't talk about country. And I think it's because of kind of the migration and conflict with like the Cuban Americans, and they think they're white, and like we kind of all are privy to that information. So when I see Latino journalists tweet today about people don't understand the Latino vote, and Latino voters in Florida think they're white, so they're gonna vote for Trump, blah 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 blah. It's so interesting to me that that's a blind spot in our communities. But then I also think it's interesting how with Ice Cube and with all the other people who say vote for Trump, mm-hmm. I think that people are worried about income brackets and tax brackets that they're not in, and voting as if they're making a certain amount of money or that they're projected to make a certain amount of money in the next 4 years. So it's all confusing to me at the end of the day. And I think that people need reality checks, identity checks, and bank account checks.
Well, to answer your question, Lawrence, I think you should always have empathy and like ask people why they feel the way that they feel. So some of the Black men that I know that have strong feelings about Trump is because of Joe Biden's crime bill. And so some of their loved ones are still locked up from that crime bill. So they're like, well, yeah, he apologized, but he didn't try to overturn this bill. And so as a result, my loved one is still locked up till this day. So that was one conversation that I had. Another conversation was more so they alluded to Trump before he was ever a politician. You know, these are his words, not mine. He said that Trump got a lot of awards. One was from like the NAACP, and he was involved with a lot of people, influential people like Al Sharpton. Now, I didn't have time to research that, but that's something that I would probably look into, as well as if we remember correctly, a lot of entertainers really loved Trump before he was a politician. And he said on the opposite side, Joe Biden, unfortunately, has 47 years of being a part of different policies as well as bills that disenfranchise and unfortunately are disadvantages to people of color. So I can't sit here and say like, you know, oh my God, like, you know, I can't sit here and say I can't understand why he would feel this way based upon the facts, one, and also his point of view. And so I think that this has really showed that people should be able to vote for whoever they want. I don't agree with the council culture because you voted for one person or the next person. I've never said, I haven't even told my mama who I voted for because that's my business. You know what I mean? And I just think that people have been so nasty during this election, and it has divided us more than it has put us together. And that's something that's been disheartening to me. So I want to be more empathetic to the person and figure out why. You know, why did you decide to vote for this candidate? And this is if they bring it up. I'm not asking people who they voted for. You know what I mean? Because hold on just a second, because at the end of the day, it's more so like I care about the person that you are and your character outside of the box that you clicked. Now, if your morals and your value systems and everything like that show me something different, that's when you'll get cut off. But I'm not going to cut you off because you decided to vote for someone because you're still trying to heal those feelings of your uncle being locked up, and that's still locked up and still not going to get out for a while due to a crime bill that was passed in 1994. I'm just not going to cut you off for that. But we see on social media, people are like, yeah, if you voted for Trump, I'm cutting you off. I'm cutting you off. You're not my friend. And I just think that's ridiculous, in my opinion.
I'm going to be very brief. I think that we have to give room for people to have growth. I think that it was a lot of Black people, and it's like Republican talking points, right? That, oh, Joe Biden has this crime bill. But a lot of Black people at the time voted for the crime bill because the epidemic, the crack epidemic, the AIDS epidemic were out of control, and they had no other solutions to stop it. So it's the same thing as saying, oh, Trump isn't handling the coronavirus the right way. And in 10 years, when he gets reelected, we're going to blame him for the way he handled the coronavirus. I mean, he handled it poorly, but he's handled it against what the American citizens want. With the crime bill, I believe, I don't know the details, but I believe that Biden and the Democratic Party handled it the way the public voted for. On the flip side of that, I agree with you. I don't think we should cut people off based on who they voted for. However, we should have discernment on why they voted the way they did. So is it my economics that make me vote this way? Or is it that I don't see, and I mean, it's basically what you prioritize, right? Do I prioritize my individual health and my economics, or do I prioritize the country as a whole functioning system? And you choose how you choose. I can't tell you how to choose, and I respect everyone's vote because that's everyone's individual right, and we can't take that away from people at the end of the day.
So I think, well, yeah, I have a lot to say. Let me unpack my 2 cents right here. I'll start by saying this. I think I've never agreed with Gigi as much as I do on this topic. Never in my life. Like
The shade, but not the shade.
Everything that you
Wait, what
said,
time is
I
it?
felt like it was coming just right out of my heart. You know what I'm saying?
Angle number.
I felt that. To start, yeah, I think empathy is the name of the game. And you know, I'll be very specific. As you guys could see, I don't know if you could see, I was taking little notes on everybody's comments. The reason why I brought this up is I went down a rabbit hole myself because somebody came for me. And you know, the rule in my life is don't come for me unless you're sent for. I'm not somebody that's going out there in everybody else's DMs and stuff. So somebody that I went to school with, they proceeded to take a screenshot of all of the people that she mutually followed that followed Trump. So it was like a list of like 9 people. Now I follow Trump on Instagram. That does not have anything to do with my political affiliation. It does not have to do with anything other than me wanting knowledge of what's going on with the president, because the president seems to tweet and post a lot. So then she proceeded to make another post on her page saying, so, hey, you 9 people here, are you following this individual for information, or are you just dumb and goofy? I got time today. Please let me know. So that sparked a reaction from me. And
I wish you would have tagged us in.
I had to take a deep breath, right? And I thought about it. And the first thing I said,
Good, I'm proud of you.
You know, I don't want to attack anybody. I want to take a deep breath. You know, my political affiliations aside, I did not vote for Trump. But what it made me feel for the first time is how I feel like a lot of these African-American men that are voting for Trump feel, and they feel attacked. They feel attacked for reasons that I just mentioned. One, people jumping to conclusions. And as great-hearted as they may be, Sharik, one thing you mentioned, you said you went down the rabbit hole and it seems like the people have lack of facts. Jasmine, you said you've interacted with this conversation before, and people, they're just worried about finances that they don't have. The assumption is that when Black men vote for Trump, they're either dumb, they don't understand how much money they have, or they don't have any good reasons. As Gigi said, they are intelligent people too. We need to stop treating them like they're just some throwaway piece of our community. They're still our brothers, they're still our sisters. And even if we disagree with them on a political level, I think we should respect their ideas, treat them with that respect, and then we would have an opportunity to try to persuade and have this conversation. But as we've all seen in this election, people are just digging in, not saying that anyone on this panel is, because they're definitely not, but I've seen nasty stuff go on where people's families, they're like, no, I'll never talk to this person again. I'll never talk to this person. Yep. And I was talking to a friend, this is a separate situation, that was going through that situation with one of their family members. And I said, you know what? I have plenty of white friends. And a lot of my white friends tell me that, you know what, their grandmother or their grandfather is racist. And when they go home, they have conversations, but they don't say they hate their grandfather. They don't say, I hate my grandmother, I'm never talking to her again. They're like, yeah, man, I had like a racist grandma. I tried to like set her straight. I'm working on her. We should have that same type of empathy. If you disagree with somebody in your family and your friend circle, have this conversation. Just because they're not coming to your side day 1, week 1, week 2, still, like, I'm tired of the cancel culture. So again, Gigi, I think it's all about empathy. As for the 11 to 16%, it doesn't even matter. Like, if you're a Democrat, we're winning. Like, why would you cancel somebody in your life because they're voting for a side? It's not even winning. It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm glad y'all gave me that moment. As you can see, I had some pent up, bottled up stuff for somebody coming from me. I let it out. I'm clean now. I feel good.
Don't come for Lawrence. Okay. Well, then let's get into some good news. Okay. Because I think we've covered, you know, what's been grinding our gears. Definitely, you know, and just to kind of piggyback back on what you're saying, I didn't say that they were lacking facts. There was a different interpretation of the facts.
That's fair.
You know, so like I said, whereas they said, oh, we have the lowest unemployment, you know, for Black people in such a long time. If you actually look at the numbers, yes, it's very true. But what caused it? You know what I'm saying? So it's just people being able to kind of trace the lineage of how things come to be. Things don't happen overnight. We're not going to have, you know, the unemployment rate drop from one week to the next. It's a meticulation of things, actually, you know, a domino effect of other policies and things that were put into place. But anybody have any propositions or voting measures or new people in the House or Senate that they're excited about or were surprised that happened? Yes, empathy is a
Oh, I want
superpower.
to read this. Benya's Kitchen. Empathy is a superpower. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, but what's on the business kitchen menu? That's what we want to know.
The menu is, let me tell you, I'm just going to do a shameless plug.
Business?
It's Black owned and it's authentic Kenyan food. Bob.
Oh,
Okay. Jackie Lacey is gone.
What up, Ron? Yeah, let's give a clap for that.
Hallelujah. Jesus.
So that was one of the highlights. There was a lot. So we saw a lot of LGBTQ members being welcomed into the house. This was very, very historic, especially the transgender young lady, Sarah. So that was pretty exciting to see. A Latinx gentleman who identifies as gay was actually won a house seat as well. Was there any other? I know we talked about Oregon. Let's talk about Oregon.
Oregon. Oh man, Oregon. I'm gonna take a trip to Oregon, and I'm just gonna go to Oregon because I've never been. I want to try the wine.
I've been, yeah.
I've been.
I would say they don't let you pump your gas.
Okay.
There's no self-serve gas.
Yeah. Well, story for later.
Okay. Well, apparently, for people that don't know, Oregon decriminalized all drugs, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, mushrooms, whatever you do. And so now what they're saying is
enjoy your life. Enjoy your life.
Enjoy your life. So if you have, I think it's under 2 ounces of cocaine or something, I don't think anything happens. It's decriminalized. And if you have more than that, they'll put you into, or they're funneling people towards rehabilitation instead of jailing people. And I know we talked a little bit about it before. That's one of the elements of the 94 crime bill that was so horrible that people are saying that should have been implemented then, that we get people rehabilitation. I will ask you this, Gigi, representing for Texas some too. I think a lot of people out there think this is a little too progressive for all drugs. How do you feel about that? I have these like moments where I'm like, yeah, it sounds good, but like heroin, like that's.
I always feel like law starts to change to benefit individuals that's not us, and so the decriminalization of everything, I'm not sure, but the decriminalization of marijuana, I think is great. I think that New Jersey did the same thing with the decriminalization of marijuana. I am happy that states are doing it. And I'm hoping that some of these individuals that are currently still in jail for the possession of marijuana, I hope that there's something that's passed to get them to be released, because I know individuals that have been in jail, and I know individuals that have family members that are still in jail for the possession of marijuana, and they've been serving some time. So I'm hoping we get to the point where all states decriminalize marijuana. I can't really speak for those other drugs because it does things to the brain, which I'm not going to get into tonight. But especially the decriminalization of marijuana, and I hope that the people that were in jail or incarcerated for that are able to be released at some point.
Yes. What I want to say to that, sorry, Jasmine. What I want to say to that is, I think from what I gathered and what I read, and what we have to also recognize, and this is what one of Biden's points as well is, yes, they're saying decriminalize it, but they're also saying let's add some sort of mental health initiative to it. So it may not be a case of the person is going to go to jail, but perhaps that person needs to be put into a facility where they will be treated as someone dealing with a disease, because addiction is a disease. So that's what my hope is, and I think it can get to the point where it could be that, worldwide. I mean, think about it now. You can go to the doctor. If you got a cool doctor or whatever, somebody coming off surgery, you can get some opioids, you can get some lean, you can get some syrup real quick, fast, and in a hurry. But if you get addicted to it, they're not taking you to jail. They're putting you in a facility, So I think it's always following the money always. And then I think we're becoming woke to a point. It's very interesting that it's Oregon, but I think we're becoming woke to a point where we're seeing that these instances of drug abuse isn't necessarily cut and dry. It's not, these people aren't necessarily criminals. A lot of them are sick. A lot of them need help. So that's what I'm hoping. And if we lead with that, then I think maybe we can see something like this possibly spread across the whole state. I mean, all of the United States.
Yeah. And what I want to add to that is Oregon is one of the centers of the opioid crisis, as well as Missouri. And if we're talking about how California and the coast lead ways for the Middle Americas and other states. I think that the win in Oregon is going to help Missouri. It's going to help kind of the Bible Belt deal with their opioid crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that we have to look at it as the opioid crisis versus, or in comparison to crack cocaine and heroin, or opioids and heroin to crack cocaine versus crack rock. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one of the. I don't do that.
You're not the ABC.
Right. I don't do that. Right. But the comparison about like, okay, we know that Oregon, they do a lot of opioids and pills versus maybe in California on Skid Row, they do more heroin, which is a derivative of the opioid. So I think we have to look at those and see what states are doing what based on their population. So I think it's a win, but I think it's a win that needs to spread like marijuana has. And I hope that we really focus on communities of color and not just the white people who suffer from these addictions. Because like Sharik, like you said, they're getting them from their doctors. They start out from their doctors. They don't prescribe that to us because they know we're going to get addicted. So they let us go. Right. So they let us go. They let us go through this pain until we find it on the street and get addicted because it's mixed up with something else. It's a whole cycle that I can go into in another day. But I just pray that we get this drug crisis under control and they stop sacrificing our lives, because I think all drugs is kind of a sacrifice of our lives based on the economy and the profits of it all.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, I mean, we can keep talking and we're going to keep looking at these results. For what I can see right now, we're going to do our final words. It looks as though Biden is at 264 and Trump is at 214 still. This has pretty much been the rest of the day. So I'm not going to look at it anymore. But I do want to go around and get everybody's final thoughts. Just how are you feeling? How do you feel about what's next? What is next? What is next? Gigi, you want to start?
Sure. What do I want to do? I would say this is that I'm not really concerned. I feel like we've dealt with a lot of presidents that are racist in our lifetime, and I don't think that this is anything different. I think that we as people are very resilient. I think that we have lost a lot of lives this year due to COVID and other illnesses, and it's more important to cherish your friendships, your relationships, spend time with your family, enjoy the time that you have, because tomorrow is not promised. I encourage everyone not to let this stress them out. We will be okay. And I think it's more important to make sure that you have the resources that you need in your household, just in case there is a inflation or whatever the case may be. But in the event that you need things, you're not scrambling to get them. So I encourage people to more so focus on your household, and your household includes your family and your loved ones, and really pay attention to that, because it is super, super, super important to protect your peace at all costs. Be empathetic. That would be the word that I would leave you with today, because empathy is so important. And you don't have to agree with someone to respect their opinions, but it is important to be empathetic, and that's how you learn and grow. And so you never know why a person does the things that they do until you actually sit down and have the conversation. So that would be my challenge to everyone that is watching. If you don't understand something before you attack someone, make sure you try to sit down and understand their point of view, because you may learn something new that day.
Jasmine?
You know what? I cannot follow up to that beautiful piece. So I just want to say, I hope everyone has a beautiful last 2 years of 2020. We've been through so much.
2 months. You scared me.
What did I say?
Years. You said 2 years of 2020. Oh, man.
We had 2 months. We had 2 months of 2020. The year's almost over. And we've been tested. And I think that it's only the beginning. This new election and this new cycle is only the beginning. I don't think that the intensity is going to go down any from either side. I think this is a reckoning of who we are as American people. And I look forward to our conversations on Yup Network. I look forward to our conversations in the comments on Instagram, all that good stuff, and how we're growing in the next 4-8 years. So stay tuned.
All right, Lawrence, Bobby Boy, bye.
I like what Gigi said too. It's hard to follow that up. Empathy.
Oh, thank you guys.
Keep the empathy flowing. Keep it light. This year has been exhausting. It's almost over. If you can, cherish these holidays. Cherish any time that you have with your family and friends. Enjoy it. I think, in a sense, we've been building up to this all year with the untimely passing of some of our heroes, some of our idols, with the coronavirus, with financial uncertainty. I think that all led up to this election, and thankfully it's almost over. One way or another, these votes will be counted, and I think it's time for us to all take a deep breath, have empathy for each other, and try to repair and rebuild and bring together as much as you can. I'm not going to tell anybody to go out there and go to a Trump rally, but if there's somebody close to you, if there's a friend or a family member, do what you can to reach out and speak to somebody. You never know what somebody's going through. I heard the other day that DaBaby, his older brother, committed suicide, and that's real. Mental health, as Gigi always says, is super serious. So if you have an opportunity that you can go bad on somebody because they came for you, take a deep breath, have empathy, and do what you can to rebuild after all that we've been through.
Definitely. So my final word, I haven't spoken about it publicly on air, but for those of you who know me personally, those who are watching that are in my family, I have a cousin by the name of, he goes by Jalil Montequin. We know him as cousin Anthony Bottom, who was recently released from jail, from prison. He was a Black Panther. He's been a political prisoner. He was incarcerated for almost 50 years. He was recently released towards the beginning of October. My family was really excited. I was planning to go see him. Things were kind of still a little bit scary because of the nature of the offense that he was accused of. However, this past week, my cousin was arrested again for registering to vote. And I'm just going to put this up really quickly so that you guys can see. This is my cousin, and that's my aunt Billy, who's down in Atlanta. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
So this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. He's not currently in jail right now. But just to think that someone who, his civil liberties were taken away from him at a very, very young age. He maintains his innocence to this day. He is now, an elder in our community, someone who we respect and we love and we care for. And to think that he was arrested for wanting to practice the same liberties that we all have, that is the right to vote. So I want to urge everybody to read up on these local policies. I'm ecstatic that Prop 17 passed in California. This needs to go everywhere. This happened in New York, where he's currently being paroled. So if you can, I'm going to go ahead and put the link in our chat if you guys are able to find the petition to make sure that they don't re-incarcerate my cousin. And just know that we're fighting a very big fight as Black people. So for us to not be empathetic towards each other, I totally understand where people are coming from when they're worried about the crime bill, when they're worried about the family members that have been incarcerated. My dad, this is his older cousin. He hasn't seen his older cousin since he was 18 years old. My dad is now in his 60s. And to think that they can strip him of his right because he wanted to practice the right to vote, it's heartbreaking. So I just want to leave you guys that is our right. And I think that it's not fair for it to be stripped away from someone when they've done their time, regardless if they're innocent or not. And the person has done their time. He's been a model citizen while in prison. He had no issues, no infractions, and he just wanted to vote. So I just wanted to leave you guys with that. And yes, empathy, I definitely feel is the catalyst of what it is that we need to be focused on, especially as a people, because we are all we got. We are literally all that we have. So thank you guys. We got another week or so to figure out what's going on with the rest of these elections. But if you voted, congratulations for just, like I said, practicing these civil liberties, because there's so many of us that don't have it. So I appreciate you all. Thank you guys for watching. Follow us on Yup Network, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, y'all.